So the world we're moving towards is one of, honestly, thinking of AI as an extension of yourself. It's going to become co-evolution in a manner of speaking. One person, one employee, going back to the corporate world, one employee is no longer just one employee. They're one employee with lots of AI agents. They are basically like an army. And that's how it's going to be. And will we be able to preserve the human element? I think so, absolutely. Now you're going to have writers who specialize in creating AI training data based on everything else they're using for content generation. Because no one's going to say, okay, I'm going to write a one-pager from scratch anymore. They're going to draft it with AI. But getting the AI workable to the point where you're at your most efficient state, that's where your true skill comes in, and that's a new form of empathy. That takes you to which AI solution do you even use? If you're a large company, it's likely you will want to build your own solution, or you'll get into a very expensive, almost exclusive contract with some AI provider, let's say on ChatGPT Enterprise or something like that. But if you're a small team, then that means you will probably gravitate towards a hosted solution like a lower tier ChatGPT account or something like that, or Claude or something else. Or if you're picky about security and control, you will probably try hosting your own smaller open source model and training that, or rather basically getting it to be workable for your purposes.
Welcome to the API The Docs podcast. My name is Laura Wasch, and I am happy to be the host of this podcast. And I'm especially delighted to welcome today's guest, who is Tashfeen Mahmud. We have met in Paris, and I'm very happy that we have finally scheduled a recording. Welcome, Tashfeen.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And I am in the very strange and exciting position to not be able to tell where you exactly work. The world a little bit far from me, where security is so tight that you're actually not allowed to tell your exact role in a company. I guess this is normal for you, maybe some of our audience, but are we allowed to say that you work at Samsung Electronics?
Yes, that's correct.
And you come to us with experience of development in IT, product management, quality assurance, business analysis, tech journalism. But at heart, you say you're a writer, and that in the end, you settled down as a technical writer, although you started working on software development projects. Can you tell us a bit the story of how this journey happened and what does magical realism have to do with it?
Sure. I've always done many things simultaneously. I think I'm a natural multitasker. And when I was young, I also had a lot of sleep disorders, and I absolutely capitalized on that. Computers were just becoming popular in that part of the world at the time. The internet was like really growing fast, a bit like how AI feels now. And I loved writing. I loved computers, software. So I just jumped into it with everything I had. And just because everything was so new, roles were more fluid, and you could basically do anything you want. And because I was interested in diverse things, I ended up acquiring very diverse skills. And over time, the writing part is what stuck for me. And that's how I arrived at my current position at Samsung Research here in Canada.
And when we first started talking, it was around the API The Docs conference, because that's where we met at API Days in the API The Docs documentation and developer experience track. I can feel people have this magical thinking that is just anthropomorphic escapism towards AI agents and AI chatbots. And I feel that a lot of us working in tech are experiencing this right now. Do you have some anecdotes, or maybe from your own life? How do you match these two experiences into a coherent thing?
Over the last several months, I've been talking to a lot of people just to understand what they think of AI. And you're right, some people take it really extreme, and now it's actually a clinically diagnosed disorder that I think they call it ChatGPT syndrome or something like that, where basically people are trying to marry their chatbot. To piggyback off the comment that you made, like people are saying hello and thank you to ChatGPT. I've noticed some things in children, like when children who are growing up with something like Alexa, they're very comfortable treating Alexa as a person. Alexa reminds my daughter to do homework. And of course, she doesn't want to do it. And sometimes she apologizes. She says, "Sorry, Alexa, I don't want to do it now." And I've seen other children do it. So the world we're moving towards is one of, honestly, thinking of AI as an extension of yourself. It's going to become co-evolution in a manner of speaking. One person, one employee, going back to the corporate world, one employee is no longer just one employee. They're one employee with lots of AI agents. They are basically like an army. And that's how it's going to be. And will we be able to preserve the human element? I think so, absolutely. I think we are more forward thinking now as a species. We're more accepting, but bear in mind that once upon a time, writing was frowned upon in Greece, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The philosophers detested writing. They were like, you're completely like destroying your mind with these symbols that you're inscribing instead of like really thinking. And here we are.
And photos steal your mind.
Yes.
Now, switching over to the other side, you said that you would be most interested in talking about where are we actually going? How is the daily practice of technical writing that you can foresee is going to be like? And my part to that was when we were talking about knowledge transfer with teams. I asked, we are now individually experimenting. Some companies are more forward thinking, setting up guardrails and governance. Approvals go through faster, other places slower. So let's marry these two. And what are the things that you typically see we are not prepared for, that it's going to be way faster than we think? And how is that part going to affect the work of the technical documentarian?
That's a wonderful way of framing that. Yes, it's going to hit us hard and fast. It's actually already hitting us right now. And there's the negative aspect of it where you hear of layoff stories and stuff like that. But this isn't the first time something like this has happened. For example, once upon a time, every developer would have at least a dedicated QA team they could lean on. Bigger, more popular companies often had multiple QAs paired up with a single developer. And now you have developers who are actually doing their own QA testing. Have QA testers gone away? Not really. They have upskilled or migrated to other roles. You have formal titles around that. So something like that is going to happen. And personally speaking, I think this is long overdue for a profession that calls itself technical writing. A lot of writers are not necessarily very familiar with computer technology. They might not understand how software development works from the inside. They are often stuck thinking about, okay, my role is empathizing with the user and translating that. That's not entirely true. You have to be the bridge between two worlds. And that's how you get a good technical writer. But what happens now is something even more radical. We are no longer writing just for humans. We are primarily writing for AI. On one hand, yes, it might seem like generative AI is taking away the role of technical writers, but the other way to think of it is technical writers are creating all the documents that are going to be used by AI to learn. So we are basically implicitly all AI trainers right now. So naturally, the role has morphed into us becoming more editors and curators than writers. And we are going to also specialize in certain areas. For example, you would have writers who specialize in UI writing, writers who specialize in API documentation, and so on. Now you're going to have writers who specialize in creating AI training data based on everything else they're using for content generation. Because no one's going to say, okay, I'm going to write a one pager from scratch anymore. They're going to draft it with AI. But getting the AI workable to the point where you're at your most efficient state, that's where your true skill comes in. And that's a new form of empathy.
Have you seen examples or can you sketch a picture where you see this being rolled out in a team setup? So, say you are in charge of a team where you have to drive them towards this way of thinking and operating. How would you go about that? And what would be the necessary setups around your team that would be absolutely necessary to be able to work like this?
So, if I'm thinking from team dynamics, the first question to ask is actually about budget and compliance. Will I get approval for this? How much budget do I already actually have? Am I even allowed to fail? So, you have to start by thinking about a pilot project and you have to come up with your business case and you have to chart expenses. You have to understand how data is flowing. That takes you to which AI solution do you even use. If you're a large company, it's likely you will want to build your own solution or you'll get into a very expensive, almost exclusive contract with some AI provider, let's say on ChatGPT Enterprise or something like that. But if you're a small team, then that means you will probably gravitate towards a hosted solution like a lower tier ChatGPT account or something like that, or Claude or something else. Or if you're picky about security and control, you will probably try hosting your own smaller open source model and training that, or rather, basically getting it to be workable for your purposes. Slight detour. I think that latter kind, where we are using local models within company settings and so on for smaller companies, maybe that is going to be like how will we do in that area is really going to define our future as a whole for the software industry. Otherwise, we're all just going to be bound to certain companies that have AI solution subscriptions like ChatGPT and Claude and all these other ones. But to get back to your question, yeah, that's how you would start doing it with the careful assessment. And then you move on to deciding, okay, for this new kind of function, like you're basically redefining your entire business processes. What do you need? Do you need to say hire a new writer or do you need to hire a new editor? What kind of people do you need? What kind of people do you have? How do you upskill? So you have to do that kind of careful assessment. You have to figure out where the skill gaps are related to AI. Those would be like the first steps, and then you come up with new roles within the team. Now, whenever you think of assessing a writer's or a writing team's performance, people just naturally go to, okay, how many pages were created or updated? That is not going to be a very valuable KPI going down the line because you're not really creating anything from scratch. AI is doing most of the heavy lifting. So the human writer starts to get assessed in terms of tasks, and the task can be editing, the task can be creating really effective default prompts, maybe creating custom tools, content orchestration, all those kind of things.
Okay, I'm just going to ask it. There is a famous book that started out, it's actually a series by now, and it was written by a tennis coach. I think it's something about stress in tennis, and that the moment that there is this moment when you feel in your body what you're doing, and when you can allow yourself to feel what you're actually doing is the only moment when you're going to be able to play tennis on a top level. in that anybody can do that because we're capable of it. Do you think that there is a similar mental aha that our generation has to go through?
I think so. I think right now everyone is like a deer caught in the headlights because the technology is so new and so many technical writers have gone by without really getting into technology. But now it's probably going to get more technical as time goes by. You have to have a proper understanding of things, and you also have to have a proper understanding of user workflows. Just to emphasize, you're not going to be writing only for AI, you're going to be writing for both. A kitchen metaphor is probably better, and somehow in software engineering, we always go to kitchen metaphors. It's not learning cooking from scratch, but walking into a kitchen where the kitchen knows how to cook. It just needs a human who it can guide through the process. So it's really a kind of dance. It's not necessarily you retooling yourself from scratch because you're dealing with an AI that already knows all these things. You're the one that needs to guide them. So that's a reframe I try to encourage. And yes, people are starting to see it that way. And just because we are humans, after all, we are empathetic, feeling creatures, it's not really surprising that we say hello and thank you to AIs.
As a person having to lead your juniors in the same profession, do you have to help them navigate through these dilemmas and attitude questions?
I actually usually have those conversations with seniors more, not necessarily at my work, but like across the industry, like people I have previously worked with, friends, because they are the ones who have to adapt. Younger writers, they're typically more eager to learn and they have already used all these AI tools to some capacity. So they're in a way more comfortable with them.
One of the posts that you wrote on LinkedIn 2 years ago,
Oh,
if I ask you about this, was 2 years ago, which was 2 light years ago. But you said a lot of people ask me this question: is it too late to get into being more AI savvy? Am I too late? And you wrote, no, actually, no, especially in business leadership, they just can't catch up. And no, you're not too late. And that the corporations move at a much slower speed in adapting to what the individual may technically quickly learn.
mm.
How is this picture now? What do you say to the senior technical writers?
I would say it's still early, actually, because remember the software industry typically moves at the pace of compliance. Even after we have multimodal AI becoming the norm, where people are talking to their AIs more than they're actually typing. Even then, I'm pretty sure because of compliance reasons, some organizations will probably want everything to be UI driven. So you're going to have all these interesting situations coming up. You can still get into AI even now. And my only advice would be don't be opposed to it. And it also probably goes against you as a writer to be opposed to something new because that's why you got into this in the first place.
And carefully navigating around the boundaries that we can't talk about what we can't talk about. But one of the presenters at API Days in Munich last month said, we call it AI as long as we don't understand what's going on. And when you know what you're talking about, you will suddenly start talking about software. There is truth to that, and there isn't. Where would you say, how would you react to this statement? Once you understand, you will not say AI, you will talk about software.
I think that's subjective, to be honest, because calling AI just software is probably a stretch. That's just my experience. Because whenever I think of AI, even now, my mind instinctively goes back to the times where working on neural networks or something like that was actually like, what? Why are you wasting your time? And that was the vibe for such a long time. Some people called it the nth AI winter or something like that. There have been several. I remember when I was working on even sentiment analysis about 10 years ago or something like that, people were like, oh, why are we even going to do this? Coming from there and consolidating that with now, I'm hesitant to call AI just software because there are some very serious conversations about, okay, these, whatever you want to call them, tools, or however AI literature currently calls them, they are showing very advanced capabilities. What we traditionally call a software, we would never even think of, oh, does it think for itself? But now we are asking that question. AI ethics is already grappling with lots of big ideas that nobody would have thought of even 10 years ago. Human beings in general have thought about this for many years, ever since G. Wells wrote The Time Machine and Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. We have been thinking about human manufactured artificial consciousness. Particularly, we have been kind of processing these ideas for a very, very long time. And now suddenly we're at that point where, as you said, this is something almost magical. So right now everyone is in discovering AI mode, but very quickly we're going to be in AI, like applying AI mode in our lives, in our businesses. For most people, AI is still a curiosity or almost something they use to draft emails or something like that. But it's going to be so much more. Right now, we have general purpose models being used for everything. Over time, it's only natural we will have smaller, more specialized models that get embedded everywhere. What we're looking at is a future of ambient AI, where AI is every single place. And that's honestly where we're headed. But if you look at history, it likes to rhyme. And you can already tell where this is going. Over time, people are going to be more and more concerned about privacy, and maybe the future is in everyone having their own AI that they plug into any kind of MCP like configuration. Like, I bring my AI to work and it seamlessly integrates within a very safe corporate environment that is audited and maintained. And I bring my best self, which is me plus my AI, to my company's best self, which is their system and their AI. I can definitely envision that happening in 30 years from now. But the next 10 years, it's probably going to be the next push towards the operating system basically becoming that ambient AI experience. That's really where we're going. If you look at the trajectory, it's always easier to understand if you just take a 20,000-foot view. So that's the kind of future I think us as writers are also going towards, where you don't really think of how do I use AI, but more like how do I work with AI?
If you have this view and drive and working towards creating a system that is basically a surrounding for these tools, then back to our original story, you're a manager of a group of technical writers. How do you then start designing on upscaling and downscaling on your writing projects and resources? Could you give an example that would help understanding how to navigate this conundrum?
To be honest, it varies from organization to organization. It depends on how much budget they're willing to use, how much, like, what is their priority from a compliance standpoint? What are they really trying to do? So, as a business leader, you will have to understand that whole picture, and it will probably need you to be a bit more involved and a bit more technical. You have to understand what AI is, how it really works, and that in turn will inform your decisions to find the right combination for your team and upscale them or, yeah, help them as you can. But as I mentioned before, the key configuration of a documentation team is going to change just because the primary task of what we do in terms of output, which is writing, is going to be done primarily by AI. They're going to be doing initial drafts with agentic workflows. They're also going to self improve. So you are not really a writer in that sense. And if that's how it is, what does the rest of the team look like? And how will the business leader make a decision in such case? It depends on so many things, but here's the amazing part. I don't think ever in the history of the software industry has tool choice been such a big factor. Like, what kind of tool you use? Is it homegrown or is it from outside? Is it a hybrid? it's a very big factor now. Can I get my team a ChatGPT license for the whole team? Or can I just stick to what we have, which is a local model, and fine tune it? There is no right or wrong answer. Only you can tell what works best for your team. I can say with certainty, though, that it will always involve trial and error. And there's going to be this period in the software industry where teams are burning money trying to figure it out. But this is basically R&D everyone has to go through. And only then, as a business leader, can you really make the right call after you've gone through the hoops, after you've educated yourself, after you've basically redesigned what a team should be.
What is the level of abstraction on which you would recommend that the knowledge sharing around tooling? Because it really is fast experimentations. The moment you would start talking anywhere, people would definitely ask you the name of the specific tool that you're using, because otherwise, yeah. What would you say the level of abstraction of conversations is the most fruitful right now?
For me personally, I can't speak to what tools we have, but I can speak generally about what tools people have in the industry. But what happens from a writer's standpoint is what kind of tools do they need to use? It depends on their company. If it's a company that allows AI subscriptions over the cloud, like a Claude or a ChatGPT or whatever, then for you, that's your tool. And you learn how to master that tool. And you might be wondering, like, what do I have to master about ChatGPT? You have to understand how LLMs work. You have to understand what's the context limit and how ChatGPT kind of carries over context. Do you want memory on or off for that? Do you want to have this in this project or that one? What kind of things do you need other agents for? What kind of agents do you even enable? So suddenly it's not very different from learning how to use a CMS back in the day. So that's one way of looking at it. Now there's those other teams where they would have a more hands-on approach, building their own tools and stuff. They might need to learn how to engineer AI projects to some extent so that they can at least work with dedicated developers who are helping them build or tune models or bridge agentic workflows. So the level of how much technical knowledge you need, it's going to vary quite a bit. But going back to industry trends and how all these things typically work, small to mid-sized companies are more likely to use hosted solutions.
Yes.
And we're going to have many more hosted solutions. You don't necessarily, we are not going to be as reliant on general purpose models all the time. We're going to have specialized models. Like I am a technical writer working from Europe. Of course, my clientele are mostly from Europe, and I want to have localization support. This is the industry I'm working in. So there are so many different dimensions to it. And arriving at that configuration, how do you even do it? If you have a hosted solution, it's mixing and matching and integrating with those third-party tools and building those bridges. If it's something your team is building locally, then it's being architected by your team or your software department, and you're overseeing that and doing content orchestration. It's a
Mhm.
very, very wide spectrum.
Do you have a good example where the documentation of these choices that will certainly be changed over time, that the committing this into writing rather than just memory of, okay, we choose that because enter banal reasons or well thought through reasons, but then later down the road, when maybe nobody remembers or the person who remembers isn't there, there's a need for a change for other banal reasons. But have you seen good examples of how the tooling choices are documented? Are they similar to architectural decision logs that would be wise to start writing while you are choosing this or that model?
Yes, of course, you do have to create those internal artifacts why you arrived at that business decision because models change. You might want to have custom training and so on. So you have to have some kind of process. And of course, if you have your own AI projects, then you have to think about AI governance as well. Those things are just, they're going to become very natural going forward.
Do you have some recommendations where a writer goes to even start understanding what needs to be learned before you want to go develop your own? things or start training your own, whatever? What is the missing education piece that is really missing?
In a word, curiosity in general, because as I mentioned, some writers have this aversion to getting too deep with technical knowledge, and now that's really hurting them. What you have to do is go back to why you became a technical writer in the first place and realize you have a brand new kind of audience who can upscale infinitely. So, this is actually an exciting time, and basically try to learn more about how AIs work from the inside. If you want, you can do a course, you can read books, but basically let your curiosity guide you. AI can't really replace you because you're unique and you're basically the human bridge. So leverage yourself, play to your strengths, and just go out there and learn. That will take you to probably new places. Like maybe all your life you've worked on very AI-centric documentation, and now you suddenly realize, oh, I like documenting for AI agents. I like documenting for multimodal experiences. Maybe you wanted to be a screenwriter in a previous life, and here's your chance. For VR environments, you will have to have that kind of insight. So everything a technical writer brings to the table can be basically reconstructed, rehashed based on their own strengths and applied to this brave new world.
Tashfeen, thank you very much. I could not possibly come up with a nicer way of closing the conversation. I really like how positively you're framing and the piece that you suggest to find with it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being the guest on the podcast. And I'm looking forward to going into this brand new future together.
Looking forward to it together. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for listening to the API Docs podcast. We thank our colleagues at Pronovi's developer portals for letting us work on this, and the entire API community for all of the mutual support and sharing of experiences that you give each other. Do you have a topic or guest that you would like us to spotlight? Drop a note at podcast@pronovix.com. If you go to the website api-docs.org, you can find the recaps and recordings of past API Docs conferences, as well as the upcoming program. Until next time, be well.